Last week on this channel, I posted a video talking about all of the improvements that we would like to see in WWE 2K23's Creation Suite. And while a lot of you agreed with many of the points that I raised in the video, I have to say that I also really agree with a lot of what you guys were saying in that comment section. In fact, I thought some of your ideas for the Creation Suite were so good, I felt these were things that we needed to put a spotlight on, and if the right person hears this, hopefully that can influence some of the things being implemented into WWE 2K23 or a game beyond that. So let's jump in and see what you guys had to say. Up first, we have a comment from Mark Duran, and while Mark commented a few modes that he'd like to see in the WWE Games Creation Suite, one that really stood out to me was Create-A-Backstage, because as soon as I read this comment, my mind was racing with not only how cool a mode like this would be, but how easy I think it would be to implement it into the game. Just imagine, you have a large square backstage area, kind of like the part you spawn into in WWE 2K23 when you select a backstage brawl. Now imagine if that space was completely empty and alongside it, you had a list of parts and props that you can drag in and place into your very own custom backstage area. You could have things like cars, boxes, TV equipment, weapons, tables, mini structures with ladders that you can climb, and so on and so forth. The backstage brawl is honestly one of the coolest parts about any WWE game in my opinion, because oftentimes, there are things in that backstage area that you can't get in other parts of the game, such as in WWE 2K14 when you could throw someone through a window, or in WWE 2K19 when you could get a fire extinguisher. The only problem with a backstage brawl is it gets repetitive quite quickly. Introducing a Create-A-Backstage would immediately solve that problem, as fans would be creating new areas all the time, keeping that experience fresh and new. Thanks very much again to Mark for leaving this comment, because honestly, I feel like this is going to be a Creation Suite feature that I'm going to be fully behind until I see it in a WWE game one day. Our next comment today is coming from Deadpool Nerd, who writes, "One small feature I've wanted for Create-A Superstar is like a haircut mode. May sound odd, but have it work like the hair dye feature." And I completely get where Deadpool Nerd is coming from. Even though we have quite a lot of hairstyles in the WWE Games franchise, it is still a limited amount of options, and sometimes, when you're trying to recreate someone from real life, you might run into a situation where literally only one or two hairstyles can fit your creation, and even then, they may not be perfect. Having a haircut feature that, like Deadpool Nerd said, works like the hair dye feature, where you have a small circle cursor which you can move around to remove certain parts of the hair, would go a long way in not only solving the problem I just raised, but across the board. It'll just make hairstyles in the game more unique. No longer will two members of your core show need to have the same hairstyle, because one of them can use the haircut feature to make it that much more original to them. On top of this, I think allowing the player to combine hairstyles could be a nice thing to go alongside this haircut feature, as again, it would just be another extra step in allowing players to take that creativity into their own hands. Being a realist about things though, I can definitely see something like this having problems, because even right now, some of the hairstyles that are already in the WWE Games franchise aren't perfect and can lead to some pretty distracting graphical glitches. And I imagine if they tried to implement a system that lets you shave hair and fuse hairstyles together, that would probably cause even more issues for the game. So if something like this is going to be implemented into a WWE game one day, I see it being a fair bit into the future after the technology surrounding the hair in the games has had time to evolve. Next up, we have a comment from James Death Major, who left the suggestion of custom crowd signs. Now, this is something that used to be in the WWE Games franchise, last seen in WWE 2K14, but just like James here, I think it's about time that this mode came back, especially when you take into consideration our ability to upload custom images into the game. You see, back when WWE 2K14 was the new kid on the block, the ability to upload custom images into the game wasn't a thing, and instead, we had to use a little thing called Paint Tool, which was basically Microsoft Paint, but within the game. Most people were struggling to make basic logos for their characters using this system, so using this system to make custom crowd signs was likely the last thing on anyone's mind. But we're not in those days anymore, and since we have the ability to add our own logos into the game, I think it's time we brought this feature back to allow fans to take things to the next level. One small note though, and that's if they do decide to bring this back, please 2K, start having the crowd that plays during the in-game matches be the same crowd that is there when you pause and go into highlight reel. I don't know if any of you guys have noticed that, but yeah, they're not the same. You'll see things like fans holding up signs during the match, but when you go into highlight reel, that detail won't be there. Instead, replaced with a generic crowd reaction. For sure, a small pet peeve of mine as someone who is a part of a minority as someone who uses highlight reel often, but an improvement I would love to see nonetheless. Our fourth comment today is coming from AFW Action Figure Wrestling, and they make a small but really cool suggestion, and that is that they would like to see the ability to add different types of turnbuckles in Create-A-Arena. And just like with the Create-A-Backstage comment, my mind started racing with all of the possibilities. On the surface level, you can have some quite simple ones. Obviously, WWE typically use the more square, rounded pads for their turnbuckles, but there are plenty of more traditional options that could be used, such as the thinner style seen used by AEW, or perhaps even the longer pads that cover all three turnbuckles at once, like you see in New Japan and in boxing. But on top of those more traditional styles, they could definitely get crazy with it and give us a bunch of fantasy ones. Some could be simple, like a long boxing turnbuckle pad that covers the bottom two with a singular pad on top, and then some could be wild, like one made out of barbed wire or thumbtacks. There's a bunch of possibilities for things that they could do with this, and my suggestions only scratch the surface, so I would love to see this in a WWE game one day. Again, being realistic, there for sure could be some limitations when it comes to something like a longer New Japan turnbuckle pad, because having something like that would cause problems with certain moves, such as the shoulder toss into the ring post, so they would have to work something out there if this was going to become a reality in the future. Our last comment today is coming from Indie Style Wrestling, and while it's quite a simple suggestion, it's one that I believe would be incredibly effective to have in the game. Indie says, I'm all for better organisation, but what if 2K gave an option to edit the names of moves, entrances, parts in Create-A Wrestler so that it'd be easier to find? Bicycle knee to V-trigger just makes more sense to me and easier to find if you want to apply it to other wrestlers. I've said it a lot this video, but that's because it's true about all of these comments and suggestions, so I'll say it again here. I love this suggestion, and honestly, for me personally, I think this would be better than the organisation that I came up with in my original video. I still think the method that I suggested there would be best for a more general audience who can't be bothered with renaming things in their game, but for someone like me who plays these games all of the time, having this ability would honestly be a godsend. I hate it when I spend forever looking for a particular move in the game, only to eventually find it and learn that it's called something completely stupid. Whether that be because it's a custom name given to the move from an active WWE wrestler, or because 2K themselves have given the move a dumb name because it used to belong to a wrestler who is no longer with the WWE, whichever the case may be, it's frustrating. And yeah, I can add that to my favourites list if I wanted to, but eventually, if you add enough moves into that list, that too will become a long, messy list, just like the rest of them. So having the ability to change the names of moves, entrances, and more within the game itself, so that you can easily find the thing that you yourself are looking for in the future, would be an absolutely great feature in my opinion, and since I can't really see any reason why or how this wouldn't work, I do hope to see something along these lines added into the WWE Games franchise in the near future. So there we have it guys, those were your suggestions for things that you would like to see in a future WWE 2K Creation Suite, and hopefully, just like me, these are Creation Suite modes that you didn't know you needed in your life before checking out these comments. Of course, I would love to hear all of your thoughts on these suggestions in the comment section down below, so make sure to share your opinions with me down there, and before you head off, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for more WWE Games coverage. Thank you very much for watching, and if you like this video, you may enjoy one of these videos as well.